Welcome to this episode of the Sports Detective Podcast Show. My name is James Williams, and today we discuss who will be the Los Angeles Lakers' next head coach. Why are we talking about this? Well, as you guys know, the story that had kind of taken over the NBA world over the last few days was that Dan Hurley had interest in the Los Angeles Lakers and that he had become the Lakers' frontrunner to become their next head coach. Dan Hurley and his wife flew to Los Angeles. He met with Rob Pelinka and the ownership group for the Lakers, Jeannie Buss. And then the Lakers offered him a 6-year, $70 million contract in which he turned down from the Los Angeles Lakers. And this whole story has been very much kind of like odd and shocking and weird because on the Dan Hurley side of this stuff, we know that Dan Hurley had already turned down a massive offer to become the Kentucky men's basketball coach. Similarly, kind of pay grade wise per year uh, to the Lakers offer of the 6 year, 70 million. I believe the Lakers per year. I think Kentucky's might have been longer, but the Lakers per year was actually like $500,000 more or so. So it was kind of like, huh. And if you know anything about Dan Hurley, and part of the reason he turned down the Kentucky job is Dan Hurley is very, 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 very much so a Northeast guy. So it was kind of like a whole weird situation here, too, especially with Woj covering the entire story here, too. Having the connections with the Hurleys. And it was also weird, too, because as you guys know, if you've been following the NBA, the last 3 or 4 weeks, the rumor mill was basically saying that JJ Redick is going to be the Lakers' next head coach. Shams Charania, a few days before this Dan Hurley story broke, basically tweeted that. He was like, "Yeah, JJ Redick's probably going to be the head coach. It's just going to get announced after the finals." And then if you're like, oh well, I don't trust Shams on the reporting, whatever. This wasn't just a Shams thing. Chris Haynes went on to Dan Patrick's show and he said, I'd be shocked if the Lakers' next head coach is anyone but JJ Redick. And he even said that JJ Redick was making calls throughout the league trying to assemble his staff around him when he becomes the Lakers head coach. So this has just been an incredibly weird story, especially adding on this part here too. This is a quote from Jovan Buha, who is a beat writer covering the Los Angeles Lakers for The Athletic. I'll go ahead and show you guys a quote here. I believe this quote came from his podcast. This is what Jovan had to say about the Lakers head coaching opportunity and the fact that right now there isn't a clear plan B in their coaching search. In talking to different people today, there has not been a clear plan B for the Lakers from this situation. I thought that this was likely going to be just a 5-day interlude and the Lakers would go back to the JJ Redick well and try to circle back, mend fences, and just go back and make him the front runner or the new favorite or whatever term you want to use again, and that would be the likely outcome. But in having conversations with people in and outside of the organization today, it has been a mixed bag in terms of what is the plan B. Okay, so before we get into this stuff, I want to touch on the Dan Hurley stuff here for a second because this was an ultimate masterclass move by Dan Hurley on how to get a massive pay raise and how to set yourself up for the next job. Because if you've been following Dan Hurley, obviously we mentioned that he turned down the Kentucky job, even though he flirted with it a little bit. He turned down the Lakers job after he flirted with it a little bit. So he's in the process of negotiating a new contract with UConn right now. He's going to get the bag. He's going to get the bag, and he's going to get the bag for as long as he is at UConn for the rest of his tenure there, whether he stays there another 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. He's going to be a very rich man in Storrs, Connecticut. Also, the fact that Woj did him this favor and put out the number that he turned down, which is 6 years, 70 million, because if you know anything about Dan Hurley, he has said in the past he wants to coach in the NBA. I believe I've heard somebody say that his dream job would be the head coach of the Knicks. And knowing that this number, 6 years, 70 million, that means whenever he decides to jump to the NBA, whether that's next year, 5 years from now, 3 years from now, 10 years from now, that 6 years, 70 million, that is going to be a baseline. That is going to be a jumping off point. That is where the negotiations start. And they're probably going to be like, hey, he turned down 6 years, 70 million. So let's offer him 6 years, 80 million. He's going to immediately become one of the best head or highest paid head coaches in the NBA immediately whenever he decides to make that jump, for whatever team it may be down the road. Okay, so I wanted to talk about that offer here a little bit here too. So, because a lot of people too with that offer, they're basically saying there are a lot of people, because I think rightfully so, there were a group of people that saw that offer 6 years, 70 million, knowing what he turned down at UConn per year, and we're basically saying like, well, did they lowball him? Which no, they didn't lowball him. But two things can be true. They didn't lowball him with the 6 years, 70 million, because he would have become, if he accepted that, he would have become the fifth highest paid coach tomorrow in the NBA without ever coaching an NBA game in his life, which would be very, very impressive for someone with no NBA head coaching experience. But with that being said, too, even though they didn't lowball him, the Lakers didn't necessarily go in with the Godfather offer. They didn't go in and be like, hey, we are going to give him the offer that he can't refuse. We're going to pay him $100 million for 8 years or something like that. They didn't give him that crazy Godfather offer. So I think rightfully so, a lot of people were surprised by that number, but they didn't lowball him. I think the right way to look at it is they didn't lowball him, but they also didn't give him the offer that he can't refuse, because he's probably going to make more money per year at UConn than he would have at the Lakers. That's my guess. I could be wrong on that. Okay. So with that being said here too, let's shift to the JJ Redick part of this story, because from my perspective on this stuff, I think JJ Redick would be a very good head coach in the NBA. Would he be enough if he became the Lakers head coach where he swings a title for them? I don't think so, but I think he would be an improvement over Darvin Ham. I don't think there's that much of a question. I think Darvin Ham was a guy that, was very nonchalant on the sidelines, sometimes lacked a lot of passion. And that was kind of like the point of a Dan Hurley hire, is like Dan Hurley is very fiery, very energy. He's not afraid to get into the referees' faces, his players' faces. And Darvin Ham kind of just sat there with his hand in his pocket the whole time, just going like, that's what Darvin Ham did when he was the head coach of the Lakers. So it was kind of his, lack of fire, and Dan Hurley had all the fire. So bringing it back to JJ Redick, I think he would be an upgrade over that. I think he's a tremendous basketball mind, and I think the fact that he just got done playing, he's got a lot of knowledge of how the game is played, and I think he has a lot of respect, because players too also respect guys that have played. And I think he would walk in the building and immediately have that respect, especially if he has LeBron's respect. So I think he'd be a tremendous head coach. And also, to the point of JJ too, I thought the fact that they pulled that, if the Lakers would have actually, and who knows that they still might, but if they would have, I thought it would have been impressive if they pulled him away from ESPN to become their head coach. Because guys, JJ Redick has a very cushy gig at ESPN. He has two podcasts he's doing right now, the one with LeBron and then his own. The dude's making pretty good money right now. He's got a media company. He's got the ESPN gig, being the number one, guy covering the finals on their broadcasts. Him and Doris Burke and Mike Breen. That's not a cheap job. I'm sure. Like, I bet the minimum right now that he is getting paid from all of his business stuff per year is like $6 million a year. And I don't know. It's a guess. That's my educated guess. It could be more. So I thought the fact if the Lakers were able to pull him away from that to become a head coach, one, they'd probably have to give him a pretty big offer. And two, the fact that they'd be able to pull that off is flat out impressive, because JJ, similarly to Dan Hurley, what we were talking about, like he can make that jump to the NBA whenever he wants. I think JJ Redick can do that too. I think he could jump to an NBA job next year. I think he could jump to an NBA job 5 years from now. He's still a young guy. He's not even 40 years old yet. So the fact here too, if you're JJ Redick, I think it was hard to leave the gig too, especially considering, guys, the Lakers, and people have been saying that it's a hard job, and it's not necessarily the most desirable job in the world, because they don't have that much assets, because they've done a bit of different trades to have the team that they currently have. LeBron James is 40 years old. They're going to have to draft his son that you're going to have to develop. You kind of have the LeBron circus. You also have the Lakers circus. You're under a microscope, and you're going to be kind of the guy that, if the team falls short, you're going to be a guy that a lot of people are pointing the finger at. So it's not necessarily the most desirable job. So the fact if they could have pulled it off, having JJ be their head coach, I thought it'd be a pretty impressive move by the Lakers if they were able to swindle that. So with that being said, with this whole Dan Hurley situation that's happened over the last 5-6 days, whatever, how does JJ feel about that? How does JJ feel if the Lakers come to him, kind of like what that tweet that we just read off said? Did they come back to him, try to mend fences, How does JJ feel about being the second option? How does he feel if the Lakers offer him a 6-year, $42 million contract, which would be $7 million a year, which is pretty good pay for an NBA head coach, by the way? What if they offered him a 5-year, $35 million contract, half the money that Dan Hurley got offered? How would he feel about that? He'd probably be more likely to say no now. That even though maybe a week ago, 2 weeks ago, he was like already agreed, maybe in a handshake deal or something, or maybe a nudge, nudge, here kind of a deal to take that kind of money. Maybe he doesn't want that kind of money now. Maybe he has more negotiating leverage. Maybe he's kind of turned off that he's not their first option and that they are kind of looking at him the way that they looked at Tyronn Lue in 2019, where LeBron wanted Tyronn Lue because he's like, hey, I won a championship with this guy in Cleveland. He's a very good head coach. He's an excellent offensive coach. Hire Tyronn Lue. And then the Lakers were like, yeah, we're going to lowball him. And Tyronn Lue was like, yeah, I'd rather be the assistant with the Clippers than take that crappy offer. And then Frank Vogel was like, I need a job. And then he took the job. And then he won a championship with them. So, and we kind of know the rest of that here. But maybe JJ looks at that as like, oh, you guys don't necessarily view me as like an actual head coach. You just view me as a LeBron guy. And I think I'm more than that. And again, if you're JJ, do you really want your one? Because the thing is here, guys, if he has like 3 Darvin Hamish years where it's like maybe they make one run in the playoffs, maybe win a round or two, and other than that, they just make the playoffs and lose right away. Is there going to be another team that's lining up to hire JJ Redick? Maybe there is. I don't know. But it's kind of like if you're making that jump from not coaching at all to becoming a head coach, you kind of want it to be the right opportunity, which is why I always thought the Lakers' job was like, hey, if they could pull that off, that's pretty impressive. I don't know what's going on with this head coaching situation right now. Because if the GM and the ownership, if Rob Pelinka and the ownership are kind of on a different page with it and LeBron's on another page, this is an absolute mess. And I have no idea what is going on with the Lakers head coaching situation right now. If you read about the candidates, and I'm going to kind of word it like this. So the other candidate that's kind of getting floated around the most with the Lakers is James Borrego. So if you guys don't know who James Borrego is, James Borrego was the former head coach of the Charlotte Hornets. And he actually had a few good seasons with them. The only problem with James Borrego is they made the play-in twice. And as soon as they made the play-in, I think they lost by like, it felt like 50 points in each game. I know it wasn't that much in both of them, but they basically got smacked in both of the playing games that he had when he was the Hornets head coach. And basically because of that, because they didn't show up in those playing games, they canned him, and then the Hornets have been kind of crappy ever since. Now, you want to say blame James Borrego for them being smacked in the playing game? Do you want to blame them for sucking the last 2 years because James Borrego isn't there? I think it's maybe, just the fact that they're the Hornets and they're just not a good franchise. So he's one of the candidates, but the only problem with that right now, if you're the Lakers and you're dilly-dallying with Dan Hurley and you're dilly-dallying with JJ Redick, who may or may not say yes, the only problem with that is that the Cleveland Cavaliers are also trying to hire James Borrego. He looks like he's the number one candidate for the Cleveland Cavaliers right now. And there's people around the league that think the Cavaliers job is a better job than the Los Angeles Lakers right now. So if you're looking at the Lakers, I've ranked this from a best case scenario to worst case scenario for the Lakers. And I got 3 scenarios for them here. Also, I will add this before I get into those scenarios. Brian Windhorst said that maybe the Lakers will keep exploring doing outside of the box hires after missing out on Dan Hurley. And I think, I can't remember when Windhorst said it, but it was like maybe they go after another college head coach. I think that is BS because I don't think there's another college head coach that would provide the cachet and the notoriety of someone like Dan Hurley. I don't know who that other name is that they would get from college. I don't know who that is. I don't know who that is. So I think right now, and this is my opinion, the number one option, the best case scenario for them right now would be to get JJ Redick to be their head coach. That would be their best case scenario. I think JJ will be a good head coach. And you could say, oh, well, he doesn't have any head coaching experience. Okay. Or any coaching experience, period. Okay, did Steve Kerr? Oh, he's won 4 NBA championships as a head coach. Okay, what about Doc Rivers? He didn't have any head coaching experience. Jason Kidd, coaching in the NBA Finals right now? I think Mark Jackson, when he got hired, I don't think he had any head coaching experience. There's like 14 or 15 all time, and actually a lot of them are actually like have pretty impressive resumes. So I don't think that necessarily matters. If you played in the NBA and especially played recently like JJ, I think you can jump in and be a head coach, and especially if you're a guy like JJ, you have good assistants around you. I think you can jump in and be just fine. I think you can jump in and be just fine as a head coach. So I think number one option, best case scenario, is JJ. Option number two would be Borrego. Borrego is a guy that's similar to the Frank Vogel hiring. He's more of a retread, a guy that, did well, kind of overachieved with some like lesser talented teams, younger teams. Maybe you put him with a team with some young pieces, some established superstars like LeBron and AD. See where you go from there. Again, maybe it's basically kind of like a Frank Vogel 2.0 hiring. And we have scenario C, which is basically take your pick of one of the assistants around the league, which none of them necessarily seem like they are necessarily that desirable. So like there's like Sam Cassell that's out there. There is, and it's guys, it's assistants that have never been head coaches for. There was Nori, the guy that was for Minnesota. That was the guy that stepped in when Chris Finch, had his situation with his patellar tendon. It's just kind of like a bunch of guys like that, and it's basically you're kind of rolling the dice that maybe one of these assistants is a diamond in the rough, which maybe they are. Maybe you do find the next great head coach out of that, but I don't know. But this Lakers situation right now is very, very weird. It's very, very weird with their whole head coaching situation right now. And I don't know what's going on. I don't know what they're going to do, but I think this is another sign that the Bus kids aren't necessarily good at running an NBA franchise. They are not good at running the NBA franchise. And Rob Pelinka has had some good moments of being a president of basketball ops, but I also think he's had some kind of head scratching moments too. So with that being said, guys, I think I could do a whole LeBron thing on head coaches, but I think maybe we'll save that for another video because I've been talking here for 17 minutes. So guys, if you got this far in the video and you enjoyed what you saw here today and you're new to this channel, please help me out. Hit that subscribe button. Our goal is to get to 1,000 before the end of the year. Hitting that subscribe button helps small channels like this grow. It helps us out tremendously in the algorithm. What also helps us out too is hitting that like button, leaving a comment, what you think about the video. Even if you don't necessarily have any more thoughts on the video, if you just tell me that I'm handsome, I will like every comment that talk about how handsome I am in the video. But if you do have thoughts on the video, thoughts on who you think the Lakers' next head coach should be, who they should target, thoughts on the Hurley Redick situation, I'd love to hear it. So I'd love to hear all of your feedbacks on this video. So thank you very much for watching, and maybe check out the rest of the Sports Detective podcast channel page. Maybe you'll find some other videos that you like. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll talk to you next time. Love you guys.